Hello again and welcome to Forum for a Better Understanding. It's been a long time that we haven't had a program featuring Judaism as its main topic. But now that we have a new rabbi at Temple Beth Israel, it makes a lot of sense to bring in Rabbi Rick Weiner to share with us his own rabbinate, his own leadership of this new community here in Fresno where he's moving from Pleasanton, and to bring in people from the temple who are very involved in the leadership at that center and also were involved in his hiring. I'd like to begin by introducing now Rabbi Rick Weiner, a Californian who is able to begin as of July 1st his leadership of the Reformed Temple, Temple Beth Israel here in our city of Fresno. In the middle of our trio of great guests, we have Dave Sicherman, who is the president of the temple and therefore was very involved in this hiring process this past year. And across from me is Marc Wilson, past president of the temple board and also someone very involved in this process who will share with us his own insights about the importance of the new rabbi and the community that they represent, Temple Beth Israel. Rabbi, if I could begin with you with a very interesting question for our Catholic viewers. In a nutshell, could you maybe show or tell us how a rabbi is different from what our image of a priest might be as our spiritual leader?
Probably the most obvious difference is my wife, who's also a rabbi.
That's right. They don't have priests, don't get married in our church.
Right. So not only do we get married, but we have female clergy. So our
right.
Yes. So we have both male and female rabbis in the more liberal traditions of Judaism. Orthodox still does not, but conservative and Reform do. We're part of the Reform movement, which is the most liberal of the major branches theologically. And unlike in Catholicism, the rabbi does not have any area that they can do that a standard congregant cannot. We just have lots more training and experience. The term really means teacher. And so the training that we have is extensive. I can train someone to officiate at a wedding or a funeral, but there is not the sense of magic hands.
Now, speaking of training, we know how we get trained as seminarians. Do you want to share maybe your even undergraduate studies at the University of California at Santa Barbara, which had a phenomenal grounding for you in religious studies?
Absolutely. The UC Santa Barbara's religious studies program is one of the top in the nation, which I was thrilled to explore. A lot of wonderful programs in early Christian history, which I enjoyed studying as well, because the earliest Christian history was the same as Jewish history at that point. In order to apply to the seminary, and for the Reform movement, it's the Hebrew Union College, we have to have a bachelor's degree going in. My degree that was heavily weighted on religious studies was helpful, but not necessarily a must. A couple of my classmates were molecular biologists and from all realms of thinking beforehand. We then go off to the seminary where it's a 5-year postgraduate program. The first year is in Jerusalem to really help our language acquisition.
You're ordained to the rabbinate.
Correct.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that ceremony might be like and share with us the joy of your own ordination?
It's an amazing culmination of, at that point, 9 years of study, the 4 years undergraduate and 5 years postgraduate. It takes place within a Sabbath service, a Shabbat service. We lead the service, the new ordinees, and then at the end of the service, the president of the College Institute, a rabbi who is in charge of training all of the new rabbis, does actually do kind of the magic hands, puts his hands on our head. Again, although it's not something that is given by ordination that he can do that, but really that's tradition. And then blesses us, and what's probably even more important than that is the document that we then receive, which is called our smicha. It's the Certificate of Rabbinic Ordination. It's a really big piece of paper signed by the entire faculty of the Hebrew Union College at all 4 of our campuses.
Wow. Now, you've been a rabbi since 1995?
Correct.
Where have you served, and what would you say would be your passions as a rabbi? As the leader of a congregation, what inspires you? What burns in you?
Since ordination, I was in the Bay Area where I grew up. I was at a congregation in Livermore that ended up moving to Pleasanton. Before ordination, I served in student pulpits. I trained as a hospital chaplain. I flew out to small congregations around the country. That's what we do as students, so that we make sure the little places that can't afford to bring in a full-time rabbi are still served. So I went to Sierra Vista, Arizona, Prescott, Arizona, Joplin, Missouri, and then I did some internships that were based where I was living as well, but I would fly out once a month or twice a month based on the place.
So those centers, which seem like real cities, I mean, these are cities, might not have a local resident rabbi.
Correct. A real city may not have a big enough Jewish population to support a full-time professional.
What are the main gifts? And this could be humbling for you to say, but what would you think would be, honestly, yourself, the main gifts you bring to leadership of a congregation like Temple Beth Israel?
One of the most important things that I've tried to focus on is simply listening, hearing what is important to the community and doing what I'm able to respond to them. And in fact, the core prayer of Judaism, the first word in Hebrew, Shema, means listen. And so I've used that as a watchword not only theologically but also practically, by listening and hearing what people connect to, what makes sense for them, where they're at in life. I'm better able to respond to what are their particular needs at that time.
I'm going to bring in Marc and David to see if they've been listening, and which is a big word right now, Shema, listen, hear. Have you, in the little month that Rabbi's been with you, picked up this gift that would be so important, I'm sure, in leadership, is to be basically, as you start especially, a good listener. What are you feeling, David and Marc?
Well, for some reason, it seems like a lot longer than a month. Maybe that was because we did spend a lot of time during the process. It is a lengthy process, but I believe the rabbi is an excellent listener. One of the little things that has just happened in the last week that really stood out in my mind is some senior congregants who live in a senior facility asked if he would do a Sunday service for them. And there's probably 10 or 12 of them that they don't get into the temple, and he agreed to it. I don't believe we've done anything like that probably since Rabbi Greenberg.
Oh my, bringing up Rabbi Greenberg, wonderful. Just so everyone would know the importance of that great rabbi, is back in the day, he would be one of those 3 wise men that set up that wonderful program of Forum for a Better Understanding, back when interfaith dialogue was really, it was a pioneering step, a major commitment of these 3 men. So we want to thank the temple for giving us Rabbi Greenberg for that. And this gift of Rabbi jumping in on the leadership of that Rabbi Greenberg, to bring him up at this moment. Thank you. Now, the idea of Rabbi isn't only that he's at the synagogue. So, Rabbi, when you're not functioning rabbinically, what are some of your interests, hobbies, avocations, the ways you find yourself enjoying life?
That does actually highlight one of those differences between the rabbinate and the priesthood. I have a family, which is extremely important to me. So I have a couple teenage sons and a wife, and spending time with them is of utmost importance, not only outside of the congregation, but as a model to the community. We're involved in music, in sports and such, and we like to participate in all those things together as a family.
Now, you did mention that your wife is a rabbi. Do you want to say anything more about even the idea that maybe you met at seminary? I don't know. Maybe you both like the same type of rabbinic work that she shares. Not always do couples share a passion and a vocation and a profession. Tell us how this worked out for you.
We actually do very different work. She works for the Reform Movement's national organization as an expert in connecting teens, youth and teens, to congregational life. We met before the seminary. We're one of the very few rabbi-rabbi couples that met before that. Many of them pair up in that intense year we spend in Jerusalem. But we met at UC Santa Barbara in Hebrew class. So we were both studying college-level Hebrew, and that was a wonderful place to meet. And Santa Barbara, you know.
It's quite lovely, actually.
Absolutely.
Actually, I've been there to visit when my wife graduated from Fielding Graduate Institute. So when she received her doctorate last year, going to Santa Barbara, we thought we were in heaven, actually. So you were there 4 years.
Yes.
Better than just a weekend. We were there a weekend, and we liked it enough. I wonder if, this is maybe putting you on the spot, but I hope not, if Marc or David would have any feeling for when you were able to reach and hire Rabbi Rick, you actually were able to also connect with a wonderful family, and that certainly must have worked in his favor.
It definitely did. The process of hiring Rabbi Rick was a 7-month ordeal that we went through and interviewed many rabbis, of which we had information from the URJ, the CCAR, which is Central Conference of American Rabbis. They would give us information on rabbis who were actually looking for work. And then Rabbi Rick certainly was the one that we ultimately selected for our rabbi at the temple. And he brought along with him, we're not getting 2 for 1.
No,
we're
that's too much to hope
That's
for.
right. We're not, and nor do we expect that. But we certainly are pleased that Rabbi Rick's family, Rabbi Laura and his 2 children, are involved in our congregation, and they've become an integral part of the socialization and the meeting people, and it's been a wonderful month and a half so far.
Marc, anything to add about this family dynamic you're noticing, a young family?
One of the things that in my involvement in 35 years, we've never been able to find somebody from California. So whenever we brought a rabbi out, they were brand new to California, brand new to Fresno. Rabbi Rick, because of his involvement where he's at, many of our congregants had some knowledge of him. My grandson has met him at camp. He already knew his 13-year-old son.
Wow.
So there was already a little bit of a connection there that I think made the transition substantially easier. Because he was closer, it gave us the ability to spend more time together. I drove over to his congregation during the interview process, and so did several other members of the selection committee, to see him in his natural environment at that point in time. And I think that was a big help. That's something we've never really had the opportunity before.
Interesting that something that seems so easily to happen, that the rabbi would come from California, but that this is an exception to the rule, and it's been a nice change for the community to see someone who already knows how we speak in California and how we think, because it's a very advanced form of life in California. We're much advanced. Well, I only say that, I shouldn't say that, I'm from Massachusetts, so we feel that we are way ahead of everyone else, only because we began earlier. On the other hand, we have to take a break, so don't go anywhere, because in 1 minute we'll be back with the rabbi, with David, and with Marc to share more about the beginnings of Rabbi Weiner's leadership of Temple Beth Israel. Stay tuned.
KNXT, the nation's only full-powered broadcast station, owned and operated by a Catholic diocese in the U.S. and streaming live on the internet at KNXT.tv. Need your support to keep the message of the good news alive. Just go to KNXT.tv, click on the Make a Financial Gift, go to Donate, and fill out your one-time or monthly offering under PayPal. It's just that easy. Your donation makes it possible for KNXT, Catholic Television, to continue its ministry by celebrating the Mass and proclaiming the gospel. Thank you from KNXT.
Hello again, and welcome to the second part of our program. It's been exciting for me to have met Rabbi Rick Weiner over the phone several times, but finally today to meet him in our studio, to introduce him to you, and to let you know that he is able to be reached very easily. In fact, I have found him the most accessible rabbi I have ever known in all my long life. It's really great, and I see a future of dialogue with the temple over your leadership. It's going to be great. Speaking of the temple, Rabbi, we've been talking about the impression of the community on you and that they're all so happy, which is good. I'm wondering what you are feeling as you land here, the energy and the goodness of the congregation at Temple Beth Israel. What would you like to speak to that community?
The energy is absolutely wonderful. There is a great variety of people, which is why I love working in this field, getting to interact with people, and the cast of characters is so colorful and wonderful and historic. As I've been learning about Rabbi Greenberg and his legacy here, I was thrilled to see that there are 3 elementary schools in Fresno named for members of the Jewish community here, including Rabbi Greenberg.
Nice.
And so there's just this great history of involvement of the Jewish community in the greater community, the interfaith work that has happened in the past. It's something that I really enjoy participating in and look forward to doing more of. And it's bursting with this readiness to embrace congregational life, and the excitement is really infectious.
I'm just so glad that it's beginning like this now. Maybe back to David and Marc a little. What would you see, or how could you explain to us who are not at all acquainted with how it is that a community chooses its leader, its spiritual leader? Could you introduce us to the whole concept of how in Judaism this actually happens, that you choose a rabbi? We don't choose our priests. We have bishops who appoint. Bishops are appointed from on high by the Pope, so there's a certain distance that we would have. We don't replace rabbis, priests. We don't change them. We don't re-elect. We don't reappoint. We don't nominate. We don't choose. How does it work in Judaism?
As I touched on it a few moments ago, each congregation, a Reformed congregation that has an opening or a need for a full-time rabbi, contacts the CCAR, Central Conference of American Rabbis, and we post our need there. We post, in effect, an application. That application is posted on their website, and it's a confidential, secure website that only rabbis can enter. They then search, if they're looking, they then search for congregations that are looking for a rabbi, or a new rabbi replacement, and then those resumes are sent to each congregation of the rabbis that respond. Then we at Temple Beth Israel had a committee, a rabbi selection committee of 20 congregational members. And we reviewed many applications. And ultimately, we hope we come to a conclusion of who we would like to offer a position to. And in this case, it's certainly Rabbi Weiner, and we are wonderfully pleased with what's going on at this point.
Now, Rabbi, when did you start, let's say, finding on the web these possibilities for you? You were looking at the same time that the temple was looking.
I actually came into it relatively late. I had decided later into the process that I was interested in making a move, and in fact, there is a rabbi who serves the region who was working on this process together with Temple Beth Israel, who called me on the phone and said, I think you ought to take a look at Fresno. I had been here before to visit, and we talked about my wife who had actually come in as a consultant to the congregation. So I knew people here, and I knew the reputation of the congregation, which is good and solid and strong. As we said, I looked online at the applications of the congregations, and ultimately, when it came down to it, not only did they have a choice of rabbis, but I had a choice of congregations as possibilities, and this was just a great choice. And I love the region. I am a Californian through to the core. I was not looking to leave the state. We have family on both sides of the state. And so this was a great central location in a great area and great people.
How many temples, synagogues were looking for rabbis at the time that you saw it posted? Ballpark.
There were probably 30 listings or so, of which I am qualified to apply to any of them. A new ordinee is not. So based on your years of experience, you can apply to those congregations of different sizes. Temple Beth Israel is mid-range, about 350 family units. The largest that we count is 1,000 families and up, which is pretty big. There's something to a smaller congregation that is a little more inviting, not just the volume, but also a better ability to get to know people.
Sure.
So I really like that aspect of it.
Marc, I'm wondering if, from your point of view, there were 20 on this committee. Can you share anything about the commitment that those people had to make? Because I can imagine this would be a very taxing and a very demanding commitment that you signed on for in different moments, different times, both of you. How is that?
It probably is the most demanding committee you can be on. As president at that time, I put together the committee with the hardest thing was finding the chair, and then with the chair, with David's help, with a couple other people, we went through and came up with about 30 names and then kind of culled it down to 2021. And told them that it was could be as long as a one-year process, and it was about 11 months. And there was times they were meeting weekly and a couple times twice a week. So it was a larger commitment of time than almost anything else you could really be doing with the temple. They were very dedicated. We had 33 resumes that we went through in depth. We did probably a dozen Skype interviews, phone and video. Then we brought 2 candidates to the temple to interview with, and then made the choice with Rick. The committee ultimately makes a recommendation to the board. We're very much a democracy. The board then makes the final choice but cannot hire. It then goes to the congregation, and there's a congregational vote. So everything is advisory until the congregation makes the vote.
This is very enlightening right now, because it brought up another concept of there was the committee, then there's the standing board. I guess the standing board sort of governs the temple.
All decisions come from the board. All committees are advisory only.
And then there was an actual vote,
And the
a real
congregation
one
vote.
person, one vote thing.
Yes.
How do you stage that voting? I mean, do they all come to the temple on a given moment, or is there absentee ballots? Or I'm wondering how you actually give everybody the chance, and how does that happen? This is awesome.
It's a congregational meeting. We, again, have rules that we have to do for it. We tried the timing to do it at our normal annual meeting. The timing worked, so at our normal meeting, the main topic was voting on a rabbi. He had come out and interviewed presented himself not only to the committee, but to the entire congregation on several occasions. Everybody that has a right to come and vote. We had absentee ballots for the few. They come in and picked it up. But we had several meetings. I think it was about 160 at the actual. Pardon me?
Oh, that would be a lot of
People.
meetings.
Yeah, we had
160 people at the final meeting where we were voting on it, and as it turned out, it was a voice vote. Again, because of the way we have our rules, if one person asks for a secret ballot, it goes to a secret ballot. and it was not asked for, and we had a unanimous voice vote.
Awesome.
Robert's rules.
David, I wonder if there's anything that you'd like to add to what Marc shared, because I think of our viewing audience that might not know this dynamic, because it's very, I think, engaging to hear how a religious community chooses its leadership.
It's a democracy, and the Rabbinic Search Committee presented Rabbi Weiner to our board. The board then discussed and voted to present Rabbi to the congregation, who then we voted at our congregational meeting. So it's a step-by-step process that has to follow, and we're obliged to follow that step-by-step process. But once the rabbinic committee decides on a person, it's pretty well etched in stone that that's the one that we're going to pass along to the board. And the board then most oftentimes will accept what the committee's done, because we've done our due diligence. We have spent months and months and months and hours of discussion on who we would like to have as our rabbi. And Rabbi Weiner is the one.
Isn't that wonderful? I'm so glad we did schedule this program, and that it turned out so well for me to learn so much about how a local Reformed Jewish community chooses its newest spiritual leader. One last question maybe for the round of all of you. Was there a quality that in particular you either noticed, out of all the qualities, one of Rabbi that really for you was convincing? It was very prominent in your decision in favor of Rabbi. I wonder if both of you can say that, and then I'll ask one final question to Rabbi.
I would have to say it's his openness, and he mentioned at the very onset listening. I think he's a great listener, but I think it's a difficult process, and he was very interested in staying in it and very cooperative, and there's always challenges, and he was very, very easy to work with. Since David and I did most of the behind-scenes work with it, he was extremely easy to work with.
Thank you, Marc. David, final thought.
Final thought is, I think the warmth of Rabbi Weiner that came through, his ability to touch people at all ages of our congregation. He has that ability, and that's what came forth for me, is that ability to discuss and be able to comfortably talk to all of our congregants.
Well, I want to thank the three of you for being on our program today. They're telling me we have to say goodbye. We'll be back next week actually with Rabbi and also with Murray Farber to share more about Temple Beth Israel. Join us again next week.